documentation. At every phase they are supposed to make the payments to the clerks sitting over there to get the dates for the hearings. So seemingly what it seems is that getting the services means, and looking at the situation, it very clearly appears that the victims are trapped in the procedures that are often delayed, all due to the lack of familiarity with laws and the procedures. Respondents therefore expressed a need for the counselling. Again, I've uttered this last point, but I would be speaking on it later on in my last. But followed, this previous slide needs to be seen with this. See it together with the comparison of the unit cost. And very quickly, if I tell you, for availing the medical service, if it is 100 units, availing the police and the legal services are 360 and 498 units. What does it mean, ladies and gentlemen? It means that availing the police and the legal services is 3.6 times and 5 times higher than the medical services. So the women end up spending more on that rather than on the medical treatment or the medical services that they require. It's a huge, it's an obvious difference which is there. Also keeping in mind that, which I've earlier told you, that 82% of the women did not resort to it. What are the interventions which are demanded by the victims? Victims express the importance of counselling, therapy and rehabilitation. Counselling is needed to access the legal services and the assistance, also to help them how to tackle with the situation. Not knowing how to go about it, they are often trapped and they end up spending more money on it. So I think counselling is also needed to teach them, to make them aware as to how to go about it if they would like to go for the legal service. Therapy is to help them know ways to handle the situation rather than committing suicide. In one of the 2 slides back, I told you that they resort to suicide. They do commit the suicide attempts. So some sort of a therapy, how to deal with the trauma, is extremely important to actually, both for the government and the non-governmental sector to do it. I've already spoken on the rehabilitation. That is, of course, providing the accommodation, but rehabilitation has to be seen along with reintegration also at some point at the later stage when we are more extensively looking into the issues. This last slide is there, Javier, you can relax. The way forward, what do we do? In all honesty, when we started the study, we were thinking of doing something on the larger scale, but the type of the constraints which I mentioned in slide number 2, it prevented us from actually being over-ambitious about it. It frightened us of actually faltering on the huge commitment which we made, and that was not possible. So it is, how do we make forward? Just 3 and 3, 6 recommendations, not a long wish list is there. To calculate the true prevalence rate of violence against women, a national violence against women survey needs to be conducted by the relevant public institutions. And the Veer, this goes for you as well. Hospitals and the non-governmental sector need to compile a separate record of violence-related cases they come in contact with in order to provide information on expenditure, on healthcare, treatment, and the legal assistance by institutions on cases related to it. So our experience was that the institutions were not maintaining the separate records which could help us actually dig out the material. Actually, what is the cost which is borne by those institutions as such? So we need to separate them, we need to emphasize on them. Of course, the gap in the justice system is there, we have been talking about it, and sensitization of the police and the judiciary also needs to be done. This can be done by the Ministry for Women's Development. Post-18 constitutional amendment, the women ministries have been given to the provinces. Now they can either make a mess of it or take a leverage and put in more money on it to ensure the gender sensitization of professionals like police, prosecutors, judge and doctors who come in contact with the victims of violence. by conducting workshops and also by involving professionals who deal with the victims of violence. My last point to the way forward is that the desire of the government is definitely there. The laws are there, they are there. Schemes are there, they are there. But my good economist sitting at SPDC office would side with me on this one, that those desires reflected in the policies and the legislation making is definitely not reflected in the funds allocated for those to actually be taken forward for the implementation. So until and unless the funds required, financial resources are not provided, it would not be able to do it. Last one thing I think which is very close to my heart, so let me mention it as one. Very quickly, 1 minute. I'm not an expert, but I've been trying to study what is happening at the societal level. But I think it's very important to understand the stability, fragility continuum that has followed and that has actually created socio-economic cleavages. And it has allowed the socio-economic cleavages to gain grounds. The inequality definitely is increasing and it has resulted into the distributional conflicts. The social tipping points are definitely creating more challenges. So we need to have the broader vision rather than having the tubular vision on the issue or about the issue. Equally important is to revisit the existing social contract. It's a heavy word, but we may not be frightened of it. Because the existing social contract, which according to me is very unfair, it allows the sustenance of the status quo, where the women continues to suffer. So it's time to actually be broadening our horizon, to look into it as to what feeds into all these ills that are taking place at the societal level and understand as to what is the kind of an empowerment this violence against women bring not only to the individual and to a household, but to a society on the whole. Thank you so much for the patient hearing. Thank you. Sorry for that.
I now want to invite Mr. Nadeem Ahmed for the next presentation, which will focus on the gender differentiated impact on the communities that have been displaced because of the construction of the Lyari Expressway.
Thanks, Rabia. I was sitting there and wondering whether my presentation would be a great interest for you after having a wonderful. Nevertheless, I will try. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I am thankful to my research team who worked diligently for the completion of this Lyari, Naima Kazmi and Zaula Khan. Mr. Asif Iqbal for his critical comments on the final draft of the report. To discuss with you one of the most controversial, the controversies, discussions, debate, protests, litigation and issues were and even at present revolve around the planning and construction of Lyari Expressway. As you might know, the development projects are often ruthless to the disadvantaged and marginalized people who have to abandon homes, jobs, and social activities without any appropriate monetary and non-monetary compensation. These projects often lack community participation in the planning process, a resettlement plan prior to the implementation of the project, and an exchange of information with communities about the implementation of the proposed plan. These considerations, ladies and gentlemen, may reduce human sufferings and could enhance the overall well-being of the marginalized people. In this context, the Lyari Expressway project was a planning planning project with diverse contradictory themes. For communities, it displaced approximately 250,000 people of 46 slums and increased their vulnerabilities. Obviously, for the government, it offered an opportunity to remove squatter settlements and provide better quality of life for those living in an extremely harsh environment. For urban working class, it promised to be a convenient and fast mode of transportation. These seemingly conflicting views and impact have been assessed through the present study. The project was launched displacement and relocation. Subsequently, the project was relaunched in 2000 and the concerns were re-emerged, which were the planning, the new design and planning of the Lyari Expressway had a huge eviction, resettlement and displacement of the people. For this particular study, there were key stakeholders of the project. Federal government, obviously, who instructed the local government to construct the Lyari Expressway and share 60% of the total funding. National Highway Authority, again the federal government agency, was responsible for the design of the project. And Frontier Works Organization, the actual construction of the Lyari Expressway. The role of the city district government, which was the local government, which is the local government, was responsible for the removal of the people, removal of the communities on the right of way, preparation of the list of affectees, and Lyari Expressway resettlement project was established for the payment of compensation to the affected people and the development of the relocation sites. Obviously, the affected communities are the major stakeholders along with the NGOs and the local CBOs and the concerned citizens. Involuntary resettlement and displacement can be analyzed from the perspective such as economic growth, need, convenience, redevelopment for static values, and sustainable communities. Equally crucial to understand and consider gendered impact of a project planning process. A design, implementation strategies and gain and losses at individual and collective levels. This study is primarily focusing on the gender dimension of involuntary displacement by examining the advantages and disadvantages of the project and its consequences of the affected population. So you can see from the slide that the DIDR means development induced displacement and resettlement. And for the purpose, I will come to later on my research methodology slide, but I have to clarify one of the terminologies, ATR and AP. Since the first eviction was carried out in 2001, so we need to divide our research in three time periods. So one time period we consider, which is the baseline, ATD, which is at the time of displacement. No eviction was taking place and the communities were sitting in their homes at the Lyari river bank. And ATR is the period which we call at the time of resettlement, which is the soon after displacement. And AP period is the one when we conducted the survey in 2011. So the purpose of this study is to measure the overall well-being at the household level as well as at the individual level. What impact does the displacement have on men and women, and obviously on children as well. The other objective of the study is to critically analyze, to critically examine the planning, implementation, and rehabilitation process through gender lens. And the role of different stakeholders, which is the most important part of this study in conceptualizing, planning, financing, and implementation. So you will find when we get the report, you will find that chapter 2 is a whole discussion about the different the role of different stakeholders in Lyari Expressway project. Obviously, the research methodology is the quantitative and qualitative methods, and is used interviews with and focus group discussion with the stakeholder of the project, which I have mentioned earlier, the government functionaries, NGOs, CBOs, the affected communities. Data was collected through field survey of the 508 affected households at 3 relocation sites, in which 252 male households and 256 female households were surveyed. And for the analysis of the overall well-being, the data was collected both at the individual and the household level. Kearney 1997 IIR model is used, is applied to measure the overall well-being. The IIR model has the 8 empowerment, risk and resettlements variables, which we use for the estimation of the overall well-being of the communities. And the 6 individual case studies also presented in the report. Coming to the key finding of the report, first we discussed about the planning of the Lyari Expressway. Surprisingly, it may be one of the few planning projects that has no official document except PC1. And absence of inclusive planning approach, communities were not involved in those who were being displaced were not involved in the planning process. They don't know where they have to go, what would happen to their homes, what would happen to their livelihoods, what would happen to the future of their children. So there was complete silence about the community's future miseries. And surprisingly, no non-adherence of the national and international development guidelines that required environmental impact assessment and socio-economic survey before project approval. This makes the planning process of a Lyari Expressway little bit sketchy. And the point I want to try to make is that when we ask about the gender sensitive policies in the planning of the Lyari Expressway, there was nothing. And as the result of that, the women has to suffer a lot. Implementation of the Lyari Expressway was started in haste. When the plan wasn't finalized by one of the leading engineering consultants in Karachi, the forced eviction was started. And as a result of the resistance by the communities, the resettlement plan was formulated. And before the first eviction in 2002, no resettlement plan was envisaged. And the affected communities reported that there was the inadequate compensation because I will tell you later on, the 50,000 rupees were given to the affected communities for the construction of the houses. Okay, coming to the analysis at the household level, and I will tell you about the something about the education, what happened to the education of the children and the employment at the household level. It can be seen from the table that the enrollment ratio for boys and girls has declined drastically in the 8-year period, which is the period soon after the displacement. Why it has happened? Because government did not plan adequately where they have to resettle the huge number of people, and they did not plan anything. So the education of the children, both boys and girls, look at the numbers from 48.4% to 5% in boys, and from 46.8% to 5.9% in girls. And this discontinuation of education was either permanent or temporary. So you can see 63% of the male means the boys who were above 18 years old, and the female is the girls who are above 18 years old. So 63% of male who most probably in the higher secondary and at the college intermediate level, and the 52% of girls discontinue education permanently. While this ratio for the boys and girls is 40.1 and 32.2. Look at the employment. At the time of displacement, 73.9% male were employed and 11.4% of females were working as either in a home-based industry or as a domestic servant in the houses. And this ratio has drastically declined in 8-year period from 11.4 to 2.5, and then it has not picked up even at present. So the displacement has taken away the income earning opportunities of the females, while the male are going back to their trend from 73.9% to 66.5%. Next slide. Comparing the income levels and assets and the loan borrowing, you can see after displacement 42.7% of the household had no income, and at the time of displacement they were zero. So in 8-year period, 42.7% of household had zero income. That increased dependence in cash and in kind transfers, thanks to the social safety nets which is prevalent in our society, that people do help within the family and within the friends to the needy people. One of the primary concerns of the affected communities after displacement was the construction of house. And since they were the poor people, and you can see the 42.7% of household have lost their income. Income loss after displacement forced them to sell asset or borrow money. So you can see that the changing in assets happened within 1 year of displacement, 43.7% household. And if we take back from the displacement to at present, still 31.5% of the household need money for mostly for the construction of the houses. Due to meager income, households were compelled to sell assets, and it's been reported by most of the affected communities that they have to liquidate jewelry of the women in order to construct their houses. And the loan borrowing has also increased within 1 year from 58.1% have taken loan in order to get their houses construction. Next slide. This table shows the comparison of living standard in 3 time periods. And you can see the sources of water. The water tap inside house was 72%. And 16.1% get the water tap inside house at the time of relocation, and now it did not catch up to the ATD period, which is only the 40% of the household have taps inside. What was the arrangement? LERP provided water tankers free of cost to the affected people. That was a goodwill gesture, and that was most welcome by the affected community. So you can see the 58.1% in the ATR period were giving water, provided water by the LERP. Now, with the financial crunch, LERP is no more able to provide free tankers, and now the communities have to purchase water tankers from the privately. The other indicators of the social living standards are doing well, but the one thing which the affected communities in all 3 relocation sites, whether in Hawke's Bay, in Thaser Town, in Baldia, they have reported the frequent power outage, not long power outage, gas, load shedding, and lack of sanitation, proper sanitation facilities. They said that the sewage pipe being jammed or the overflowing everywhere. So there's a health and hygiene problem is currently over there. Next slide. Availability of the public service and facilities. Most of the respondents reported that we have taken this from the regularity and irregularity of the services. So you can see from in ATD, most of the services like water, gas, doctor, transportation, medicine were above 90%. The frequency of the availability was above 90%. But what is happening at the present at the 3 relocation sites? Water is regularly available for only 26.6% household. Doctors are rarely there. Transportation is not there, and there is a scarcity. There's a lack of life-saving drugs over there too. So this all been increasing the vulnerability of the affected population, especially women. Okay, coming back to the individual analysis. In education and in employment, similar trends being followed, like the discontinuation was permanent discontinuation higher for males than females. The employment loss is higher for female than male. So it's a kind of a verification of the data, the information being collected at the household level. Next slide. Okay. Here you can see the income profile of the affected male and female, and you can see the percentage of female having zero income has increased from 78.1% to 88.7% in ATR period and even at the AP period. Male who were earning up to 7,000 were 64.6% in ATD period and has increased to 77%. So you can see the female, you cannot find any female within the bracket income group of 7,001 rupees to 15,000. Only 0.4% at the time of displacement, but now you will find none in the AP period. So displacement has really shrunken the income earning opportunities of the female. And the most critical period was the ATR period for the women, because in ATR period, women has to bear the losses of income, the loss of employment, lack of social services, inadequate housing, so all sorts of miseries and the sufferings being borne mostly by women. And what happened to impact on socializing? After displacement, the impact on socialization is more severe for females than men. You can see from the percentages that 55.5% females said their socialization has been declined. They've been feeling a kind of isolation at the re-education side compared to male, because male can because I have to. You can see from the previous slide that transportation facilities were irregular. So women cannot wait for longer hours for a bus, but man can. So the female been feeling a kind of isolation at the re-education side. Next slide. These are the perception of effect. We have asked about too many questions about the eviction process, housing standard, government attitude, compensation policies, and I'm giving you just a clue what has happened in affected communities' perception, like how they see the displacement. 63.3% of females said their living standard has been declined compared to 60.3% male. And according to 13.9% male, they said their standard of living has increased. So there's a kind of a higher percentage of male and females saw their living standard has been declined after the displacement. The perception about the eviction process. So this is both positive and negative. As you can see, the 55.8, when we add to the smooth and systematic, 5.8% male said it's been good, it's been positive, while the 44.2% of male said it's been painful and traumatic. So half of the male and female have a balanced view about the eviction process. Government attitude towards effectees. Luckily, the government attitude towards effectees was positive during and after the resettlement, during and after the displacement. As you can see, the 65.2% of females said that the government attitude was cooperative and sympathetic. You can see the percentages, and 34.8% females said it was a bit harsh and bureaucratic. So there was the government has done well after I think the first eviction. They have learned the lesson that they have to make some planning for the affected communities in order to lessen their impoverishment and their suffering. Okay, coming to the most crucial slide of my presentation. That the overall well-being, as I told you earlier, the overall well-being is measured by applying the IR model with a slight calibration. We have included the enrollment ratio. In the original IR model, there was no education module in the IR, the Carne's IR model, Carnea. So enrollment ratio for boys and girls are included in the model along with the other variables. You can see, okay, let me explain to you something about what we have done. Mean value close to 1 represent the high well-being, and mean value close to 0 means low well-being or negative well-being. So 31 variables has been chosen from the information collected at the household level, and they have been standardized by the higher level of well-being. So you can see in ATD period, the overall well-being of the household was 0.8 and it's close to 1. So it means that at the time of displacement, the overall well-being of the household was high. But look at the well-being at the ATR period. It drastically come down to 0.3. And this ATR period varies from 2 to 6 years because the displacement has been carried out in 3 different points of time: in 2004, 2002 in Hawke's Bay, 2004 in Baldia, and probably 2009, 2010 in Chestertown, and 2009, 2010 in Baldia. The household, and look at the figure in AP period, which is 0.61. What does it imply? It implies that the household are catching up their pre-displacement well-being, but they are still short of even after 6-7 years. So this tells us that involuntary displacement has increased the impoverishment and suffering at the household level. And when we compare these two, this graph at the male household and female household level, you can see the female graph, the U curve of female is consistently below the male households, which is the black line. At the time of displacement, the males were 0.8, in comparison female were 0.75, and in the ATR period, the overall well-being of male declined to 0.232, while the females 0.27. The difference between the male and female was 0.5% in ATD period, 0.5 in the ATR period. But this gap is increasing. This gap is increasing means in the current point of time, males are 0.61 and females are 0.52. So looking at the graph, we can conclude that the females are unable to catch males in the period of in the coming years because they have no source of income, they have permanently discontinued their education, they have lost employment, they have no employment opportunities, and their overall well-being has been declined substantially. Coming to the conclusion of this presentation, involuntary displacement caused sufferings and impoverishment risk in both men and women. However, no significant difference was seen in impact of the allevy on men and women, females continue to face extended unemployment and loss of income. The project plan did not contain any special clauses, provisions for disadvantaged people, especially women. In order to facilitate the resettlement process, the role played by the civil society sector in early phase of the project was useful in highlighting issues such as eviction, compensation payment, and resettlement plans. Local NGOs identified community activists and helped in establishing local CBOs. Ladies and gentlemen, had the LEW project used a consultative and participatory planning approach, the intense suffering and impoverishment, pain and devastation could have been minimized. Thank you very much.